Welcome, everybody, to week 9. It's good to know that you're on the other end listening tonight. We're having some nice weather here in Ohio, and spring feels like it's getting closer. Hopefully, some of you have been outside enjoying the weather and walking and getting some exercise and some activity in. So tonight's recap will be a reminder of all the benefits that you get by being out and being active. So just a brief reminder of last week's nutritional challenges to cut back on or to stop your diet soft drinks because they're acidic and they're very oxidizing, they're very aging, they're very inflammatory. And if you don't believe me and you've got a little bit of arthritis, have a couple of cans of diet soft drinks in a day and see if the inflammation in your joints don't flare up a little bit. Also, I ask you to reduce your intake of alcohol and tobacco, especially the tobacco. This is clearly a real problem for your body because of the amount of oxidative stress it causes and the association with heart disease and cancer. So if you use tobacco in any form, please make a real strong effort to cut back, maybe by 50%. Not something I'm asking you to tackle in the program, but cutting back will certainly put you on the right trajectory. And then I'm hoping that you're stretching 10 minutes a day after we saw Coach Hartzell's demonstration and his inspirational movements at the age of 80. So tonight's review topic is cardiovascular fitness. And this is about getting your heart rate up. But it doesn't have to look like what you might think it looks like. It doesn't have to be jogging on a treadmill or working on an elliptical. It can be any activity that you enjoy that gets your heart rate up and makes you break a light sweat. So this can be walking, this can be weightlifting, this can be doing an activity with your friends. It can be a lot of different activities. So we talked about the definition of cardiovascular fitness. And what this means, it's your ability to sustain activity for long periods of time without getting short of breath or tired. And it's a function of 4 different variables. First is your lungs' ability to oxygenate blood. So I mentioned if you have emphysema or asthma, then you might have a little bit of difficulty with this, but it doesn't mean you can't start walking or you can't start moving. Another variable is the strength of your heart to pump the blood. Some of you have a very strong heart. Some of you have had bypass surgery. Some of you might have a mild form of congestive heart failure, or maybe you have a defibrillator implant. So we have all different degrees of heart strength and capability, but it doesn't mean that you can't get out and walk or increase your activity. In fact, we want you to do that when you're in cardiac rehab. That's what that's all about. It's about safely progressing to a little bit higher level of cardiovascular fitness. The health of your blood vessels really is about the ability of your blood vessels to make nitric oxide and dilate when they're stimulated to dilate because of increased blood flow from exercise. So those healthier arteries that can dilate because nitric oxide is being made very well means that you're going to have more air and better wind when you're exercising. So a man that's having problems with erections is not making nitric oxide. He's going to feel a little bit more winded, but it's not a reason for him not to exercise. In fact, if he does start to do gradual cardiovascular exercise, he will tell his body to make more nitric oxide. And he may notice that those erections those nighttime erections come back, or he becomes more firm when it's time. So this is, again, something that even if your blood vessels aren't necessarily healthy, that they will respond to exercise. And if you have high blood pressure, it's the same type of a problem. You're not making enough nitric oxide. So by exercising, it will help train your body to make more nitric oxide. And then the ability of your cells to efficiently burn oxygen is the last variable. And this is the one that is most responsive to training. It's the most responsive to cardiovascular fitness. And this is all about the number of mitochondria in your cells. And I'll review that again with you, and I'll show you a couple of pictures. But the more you get your heart rate up, the more mitochondria you will tell your body or your cells to make. and the faster your metabolism will become, and the better you'll be able to have enough wind when you're exercising. So there's a lot of results from inactivity. And of course, these are things we're trying to stay away from. But the better you can move, the quicker you can get out of bed, the better you can walk up and down a flight of steps or walk up a hill, the better your cardiovascular health. When you start slowing down and you're using a walker to get around, and then you're not able to walk and you're in a chair or a bed, you know you're getting closer and closer to passing on to the next world. So we want to all stay as active as we possibly can until our last breath. So the benefits of cardiovascular fitness should be an easy review. These are the things that drive a lot of people to want to get in shape and improve their fitness, because we see improvements in cholesterol, in blood pressure, and blood sugar. We see a reduced risk of cancer and heart disease, and faster metabolism and more energy. Those are pretty well established. These are nothing new. There are also other benefits, one of which is it slows the aging process. And if we go back to the first week, we're slowing the shortening of telomeres in the chromosomes with exercise. And this is moderate exercise. People that do a lot of running, and they just run, 100 miles a week, and they've done this for 40 years. This is excessive exercise, and this actually has kind of the reverse effect. It can be hard on the joints. It can accelerate the aging process, because what happens when you do that? Well, you create an oxygen deficit, so you have to breathe a lot of oxygen. Oxygen is life-sustaining, but oxygen also generates free radicals. And if you haven't balanced those free radicals with the right type of antioxidant supplements and with nature's foods that are rich in antioxidants, you're going to continue to accelerate the aging process. So the people that live to be 100 usually are people that eat the food that they have grown, and they walk 5 or 6 miles a day. It's that level of moderate activity that seems to be the best for longevity. So other benefits, better sleep, less arthritis pain, increased intestinal motility, so there's less constipation. And then we have all these mental benefits of cardiovascular fitness, a threefold reduction in your risk of Alzheimer's disease. Why is that? Well, Alzheimer's disease is a disease of oxidative stress. And when you exercise, you increase blood flow to the brain, which enhances your memory, focus, and intelligence. But the point I want to make is half of all of dementia is not Alzheimer's disease. It's multi-infarct dementia. These are like mini strokes in the brain. And this is a vascular problem. These are blood vessels that are full of plaque, and they clot off, and they cause these little microvascular strokes in the brain, mini strokes that you don't have any symptoms from, but in time, your mental capacity, your cognitive function looks just like Alzheimer's disease. So this can be prolonged or prevented by getting your heart rate up with cardiovascular fitness. And Alzheimer's disease also is a disease where the nerves in the brain, they get tangled, and they get a plaque formation on them that slows down the nervous conduction of energy. And so this is a little bit different process, but exercise also helps to slow that down as well. And we know that some of the other benefits of cardiovascular fitness help with problem-solving abilities. We also know that there's psychological benefits to exercise. These should be a quick review. I found this journal article just recently when I was going through a stack of journals, and I saved this from a couple of years ago. But this is looking at fitness, fatness, and mortality. And the conclusion, you can't read this from the front page here. I just drew it right off the conclusion section. It says that reduced exercise capacity was a strong independent risk factor for all-cause mortality. So not staying cardiovascular fit increases your risk of dying of many different diseases. And then they said more emphasis should be placed on measuring exercise capacity for developing strategies to improve cardiovascular disease prevention programs. So we're trying to find ways to assess what your exercise capacity is and develop strategies to help educate people on this. So how do you develop this cardiovascular fitness? Well, the guidelines that we follow come from the physical activity guidelines for Americans from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And these are old guidelines, but they still stand. So they're recommending that we have aerobic activity at least 150 minutes a week, which is the equivalent of, let's see, that would be 2.5 hours of brisk walking a week. Or you can go at a higher level of intensity where you're more short of breath and you're exercising at a greater intensity, and you can reduce the total time in half to 75 minutes a week. But you can also divide these up, and you can mix these up. You can do 60 minutes of moderate physical activity, like brisk walking, and then you can do maybe 45 or 30 minutes of the vigorous aerobic jogging or running. And you can divide this up at different times of the day. It doesn't have to be in one session. And then how do you develop this fitness? Well, we use the acronym, the FIT principle, for not only cardiovascular fitness, but we use it for strength training and for flexibility fitness. So the first abbreviation, F, stands for frequency. And the answer to how often you should do this is at least 3 days a week, and at the most 6 days a week. Then I stands for the intensity, how hard. And the answer is either in the fat burning zone or the aerobic zone. And we will explain those and go over those. Then the next T in the FIT principle is the time, how long. And it depends. If you're going a lower intensity, the fat burning zone, which is a fast walk with a friend, but allowing you to carry on a conversation because you're not too short of breath, that's 30 to 60 minutes a session. And if it's a higher intensity, then you only have to do 20 to 30 minutes. And remember, this is 3 to 6 days a week. And then the type of exercise is probably the most important variable. And that has to be exercises, activities that you enjoy. This slide is just a relative slide showing you the benefit that happens when you exercise 3 days a week. If you do it 2 days a week, you get some of the cardiovascular benefits. You can see there's marginal benefit from doing this once or twice a week. And what we're talking about, these benefits we're going back to the previous slide, lowering your cholesterol, lowering your blood pressure, lowering your blood sugar, and then the mental and psychological benefits. Those are all the reasons that we should be motivated to take time to do this. But 3 times a week seems to be magical. You really get a good return of your investment after you've done it 3 days a week. And then each subsequent day, there's a little bit more a benefit to you until you reach 6 days a week. And if you continue to do it every day of the week, then there's diminishing returns because the body needs at least 1 day a week to rest and recover. So the National Weight Control Registry also gave us a clue in this study about the benefits of walking briskly. These were people who lost, I believe it was 30 pounds and kept it off for over a year. And what they did is they exercised approximately 3,000 calories a week worth of exercise, which is 500 calories a day for 6 days. That was the equivalent of walking briskly for 65 minutes a day. So that's not all these people did. They also ate a healthy diet, but their exercise component was pretty committed. 6 days a week for about an hour of brisk walking. That's quite a commitment. But not only did they lose the weight, they kept it off long term. The reality is that only 15% of us exercise with enough intensity and frequency to meet the minimum recommendations set by the American College of Sports Medicine. So we have to really be honest with ourselves. Maybe some of us think we're exercising enough with the right intensity, but the reality is very few of us are really meeting this standard. So we wanted to talk to you about your maximum heart rate and how to calculate that. It's not that we're trying to get you to exercise at this level, but you need to know your capacity, your maximum heart rate capacity. And the formula is really simple. It's 220 minus your age. So I gave an example of a 50-year-old. If we do the math, A 50-year-old's maximum heart rate would be 170. Now, again, this 50-year-old could go to the emergency room with a heart rate of 200 and have a medical condition that's pretty urgent because the heart shouldn't go that fast. But when we talk about exercise, this is really about as high as we want this person to go. Then we have to calculate your target heart rate zones. And there's a table in your workbooks on page 134 that you can refer back to. And I've given you some space in that table to do the math for yourself based on your age and to figure out the heart rate ranges for each of these 4 different zones. And they're really just percentages. So in the anaerobic zone, you're calculating 85 to 100% of your maximum heart rate. And again, that depends on your age. Then the aerobic zone is 65 to 85% of your maximum heart rate. The fat burning zone is 50 to 65%. And the warm-up recovery zone is about 50% of your maximum heart rate. So we want you to know what those zones are, and want you to each calculate that so you know. And you can look at your heart rate when you're walking or on a bicycle or on the treadmill and check your pulse and be able to immediately know which zone you are in. Because the goal is not to get you in the anaerobic zone. The goal is to get you in the fat burning zone as a beginner and then advance to the aerobic zone as you feel more comfortable. So another way to know how fit you are and which intensity level you should be at is if you really haven't done anything, if you've been pretty inactive, then you should train at the 50 to 65% maximum heart rate zone. In other words, the fat burning zone. So we're not asking you to do any more than a relative brisk walk. And again, your brisk walk and my brisk walk might look different. So it's your perceived level of exertion. You should be able to carry on a conversation without getting extremely short of breath. And you should not be chopping up your words because you can't breathe in between as you speak. So this is kind of walking in a hurry, but still able to speak full sentences. So if you're really overweight and you're moving a lot more weight, that's going to make you more winded. And your brisk walk may look pretty slow to somebody else, but that's okay. You're competing against yourself. You're finding where you are and you're progressing from there. If you are capable of doing this and you can, let's say you've already been running or you already have been exercising in the anaerobic zone where you can't get oxygen, and that hasn't bothered you, and you know that your heart is healthy and you've been cleared medically, then we consider you semi-trained, and we would say that you could exercise at a higher intensity in the aerobic zone. So we talked about how you burn calories in the fat burning zone and in the aerobic zone. And this is really, in some ways, it's great news, because if you're 100 pounds overweight and you're getting your heart rate up to 65 or 60% of your maximum heart rate on a treadmill, walking 2.5 miles an hour, then you don't have to go any farther than that or any more intense than that. And what you're seeing is how much calories you're burning in a 20-minute session in the fat burning zone. So as you walk for the first 20 minutes, you're going to burn glucose, which is a storage form of glycogen, or a glycogen is a storage form of glucose. You're going to burn that as part of your walking or your exercise. You'll burn 110 calories of this glucose. This is stored in your liver and your muscle. One of the reasons we like you to exercise in the morning is because overnight you've burned up some of this glycogen, this sugar in your muscle and liver. So you deplete this pretty quickly. And once you do, then you're going to start burning more fat as energy for the exercise session. But in this case, the calculation shows us that 110 calories are burned from glycogen or carbohydrates, and 110 calories are burned from fat. Now, what happens after you eat, or after you're done exercising and you eat? If you have a piece of bread or a half a cup of rice, you're going to probably restore those carbohydrate stores in your liver and muscle. And that 110 calories is going to be negated because you're just putting energy back in the muscles. But you have burned 110 calories of fat. And unless you overeat, you're going to be in a negative calorie deficit, and that fat weight is not going to come back on. So this person has burned 220 calories in 20 minutes. Half of those calories are restored when you eat, but the other half, if you don't overeat, particularly if you're low in carbs, that's 110 calories of fat that you've burned off that shouldn't come back. But now let's say you're thinking, you know what, this is too easy. I'm trying to lose weight quicker, and I didn't sweat very much, so I'm gonna speed this up. And I have not run in 20 years, but I'm going to start running down the street, and I'm going to push myself to jog as much as I can for as long as I can for these 20 minutes. Well, you're going to probably feel miserable. You're going to be very out of breath if you're not trained to do this. And you're going to think every minute of those 20 minutes is lasting way too long. It's going to be difficult. But your motive is to burn more fat. And you think because you're sweating more and you're out of breath and it's hard, you've burned more fat. But look what happens. You didn't burn more fat. You burned the same amount of fat calories as if you were exercising at a lower intensity. And why is that? Well, the word anaerobic means without oxygen. If you don't have oxygen, you can't burn fat. And that's exactly, it's kind of like if you have a fire at a fire pit in your backyard and you're burning wood, but you don't have any oxygen on the fire, you're not going to burn the wood. So you've got to have oxygen as your fuel. And so when you're in the anaerobic zone, you're not burning oxygen. You're not burning fat efficiently. So what you're doing is burning a lot of calories because of the intensity, but that sugar gets replaced as soon as you eat. So the good news is you burn fat much better in the fat burning zone, and this is a much easier level of intensity to maintain over time because you don't perceive this as a miserable 20 minutes of time. There's a lot of different exercises that you can do, and I just showed you some from this list just to get you thinking. It doesn't have to be on a treadmill. It can be square dancing. It can be social dancing. It can be working in your garden. It could be walking on a golf court with your spouse or pulling a cart. It can be hiking. It can be fun activities. And you can see that the heavier you are, as you move that excess weight, the more calories you're going to burn. There's another way to look at cardiovascular fitness, though. So the first way is exercise at a low intensity where you're not out of breath. And that's going to be easy for all of us because we're not going to feel like we're overexerting ourselves. And we can probably build that up in time to be able to walk 30 or 40 or 60 minutes a day if we start slow. But there's another way to look at this. So if you look at what nature teaches us, look at these animals, these lean animals, and then look at this pack of humans running in the Boston Marathon. And my question for you is, when was the last time you saw a dog, a rabbit, a cougar, or a deer running a 26-mile run at a nice steady pace? Well, they never do that. And if you look at how these animals run, they usually are darting. They're sprinting from one place to another. They're running away from a threat, or they're running to catch a potential meal. So they have to be trained as sprinters. And they're also very lean animals. And so sprinting or a high intensity exercise gives us a valuable lesson to stay lean. So let me develop this thought. If I ask you who is the leaner of the two athletes, the marathon runner or the sprinter, the first thing that comes to mind is that the marathon runner is certainly a skinnier, lighter person. The sprinter is usually much more muscular and weighs a lot more. But if you look at the fat content, the sprinter will always have less fat. And the reason they have less fat is they've learned to burn fat very efficiently by the way they train. So the way they train is interval training. Now, you should not do this unless you've been cleared by your medical provider or you're already doing something like this. You know that you're capable of doing this. So this is a high intensity exercise that you can do for 20 to 30 minutes, 2 or 3 days a week. And get the benefits of really burning fat efficiently. This is how a sprinter would train. So this is about perceived level of exertion. So there's a very light form of exercise like a slow walk. There's an easy form of exercise like a slightly increased speed in your walk. And then there's a normal intensity, which would be a normal walk. Above normal is a brisk walk. Somewhat intense is a brisk walk that you're almost taking a running step every now and then. And then it goes all the way down to the highest level of intensity where you really don't think you can sustain that long because you're going to get really winded. So when you do this type of interval training, this is what you see on the treadmills when you go in a fitness center. They're already built in. They're designed to help you pass through the steps of this interval training. So there's usually a warm-up period, usually 2 minutes. This is to get the blood flowing. This is to get the arteries dilated. This is to warm up your muscles and get you prepared. So this is a 5 out of 10 intensity. This is a little bit faster than a brisk walk. And then you'll do a 1 minute of a 6 out of 10 intensity. So this is a run. This is not a sprint, but it's a little bit faster than a normal jog. And then you'll go higher level of intensity. Maybe you increase the speed on the treadmill from 5 miles an hour to 5.5 miles an hour for a minute. And then the next minute you go up a little higher. Now you're at 6 miles an hour. And now you're at 6.5 miles an hour and you're getting very winded and you're thinking, I don't really want to keep this up. When do I get to slow down? Well, the next minute, the treadmill just automatically slows down to a level 5 intensity. So you go from maybe 6.5 miles an hour down to 4.5 or 5 miles an hour. And it gets a little bit easier. You kind of catch your breath. And then you repeat this cycle 3 more times where you're increasing the intensity. You're getting really winded. You're in the anaerobic zone, which means you can't get enough oxygen, which means you're very short of breath, which means, in a sense, you're not burning fat very efficiently. But there's a benefit to this. When you finish this, then there's a 2-minute cool down to wash the lactic acid out of your muscles so you're not sore and to gradually let your body cool down. Okay, so how does this type of exercise speed up your metabolism? Well, it's all about these mitochondria. These are little, we call them the powerhouses of the cell. They make fuel for your cells to burn calories. And this is what the mitochondria look like. There's these, we call them organelles. They're these little sacs in your cells that have all these folded membranes within them. And this is where energy is burned. This is where the fuel of your cell, ATP, is made. This is where you burn fat. This is where you burn blood sugar. And this is just showing you, if you could blow this up and look at this membrane a little bit closer, you would see what's happening in the membrane. So these little blue balls represent the inside and the outside of the membrane, right here, inside and outside of the membrane. And we see these little proteins in the wall of this membrane. And the proteins are passing energy down each molecule until it gets to the end where you make ATP, the fuel of the cell. We talked about CoQ10 being so important right here. This is a protein that often becomes depleted when you take cholesterol medicines, and it makes you more tired. It makes your muscles and joints ache. So how do we burn more energy? If you want to burn more energy and increase your metabolism, your body has to respond by making a larger surface area or more mitochondria to burn that energy, because you need oxygen to run this system. So if you can increase the surface area of these folds in your mitochondria, you'll be able to burn a lot more fat very efficiently. So this is what it looks like. A sedentary lifestyle, you don't have too many mitochondria. So you get winded pretty easily when you start to, try to jog or run. You don't have the mitochondria to burn the oxygen very well, so you get short of breath. You have a slower metabolism with this, so there's more insulin resistance and a higher risk of developing diabetes. And certainly your risk of cardiovascular disease goes up, because remember, with sedentary lifestyle, you're not doing anything to stimulate your body to make nitric oxide. And you need nitric oxide. It will naturally decline with age because of the aging process and the diet most of us consume. But when you do cardiovascular exercise, particularly in the interval training, the anaerobic zone, you're starting to tell your body to make more nitric oxide. So this is someone who does this. They exercise in this anaerobic zone. They have short bouts where they just can't seem to get enough air to breathe. They're very winded. They couldn't say a word to you when they're exercising at a 9 out of 10 intensity on the treadmill. And so what does the body do in response to this? It increases their aerobic capacity. Have you ever seen a race, either in the Olympics or at the college level, where the runners will run a 400-yard dash? If you've ever done that, that can be one of the most miserable races. And these men and women will run this 400-yard dash. It's a 400-yard sprint. It's an all-out sprint, and you're just dying the last 100 yards trying to hang on to your speed. And if you interview them 3 minutes after the event, they're breathing normally. They don't even appear winded. And most of us would not be able to talk for probably 10 minutes if we didn't pass out. Well, the reason is they've got all these mitochondria, and they're quickly able to use the oxygen to burn it for energy. So they have great aerobic capacity. They have an increased resistance to fatigue. They recover much quicker. They have more endurance, better fitness, lower risk for diabetes and for heart disease. This is what we want. And if you have this many mitochondria, if you go from this to this, your metabolism is increased probably 3 or 4-fold. So this person probably burns 1,200 calories a day to maintain their energy requirements. This person could probably consume 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day and still burn all that energy because they have so many mitochondria that can burn fat while they're resting. This person is generating a lot of heat. This person is going to have cold hands and feet. This person is going to have warm hands and feet because they're generating so much energy because their metabolism is so high. So these are what the upper end athletes look like. And most of us don't have that goal. But the idea is the more mitochondria we have, the faster our metabolism. Some people will try to sell you on a supplement called L-carnitine. L-carnitine is found abundantly in heart muscle and skeletal muscle. Its job is to take the fats in the cell, the fatty acids, and to transport them into the mitochondria where they can be burned as energy. And we know that exercise depletes L-carnitine. So you lose the transporter to carry fat into your cells. Now you can't burn fat efficiently. So people are going to try to sell you L-carnitine. They're going to say you need 500 milligrams a day to increase your metabolism. Well, the problem with that is most people don't have the exercise capacity that's going to make a difference. Most people taking L-carnitine look like this. They don't look like this. So they're probably not going to deplete their L-carnitine, and it's probably more of a gimmick than anything else. So how do you burn more calories? Well, again, we talked about increasing the surface area of the mitochondria. You can do this by aerobic cardiovascular training or anaerobic training in particular. You can do it with interval training. You can get on a treadmill and push the interval training programs. It'll take you through where your heart rate goes way up and then it comes back down a little bit as it eases off on the intensity, and you keep cycling. And sometimes you never know what's next on an interval programmed machine. Strength training can also do this, especially if you go from one strength training exercise to another without really catching your breath. This will help you burn fat more efficiently. And you can try L-carnitine to help you burn it efficiently, but it's more of a gimmick than a real necessity. You can also take CoQ10 to help you transfer that energy in your cells. You can also fast for 24 hours at least once a month. We know that fasting actually enhances mitochondrial production. It helps your body get better at burning fat. And why is that? It's because if you're not eating, your body has to find a way to burn the fat that you've accumulated on your waist and your belly so that you don't starve. This is the way we were designed to live, and the way most humans live up to 200 years ago, when a meal wasn't guaranteed every day or every 6 hours. Their body had to adapt to that, and they had to be able to burn fat that was stored from those times when there was plenty of food and they overate. You can also fast for 10 to 12 hours or 18 hours, and fasting increases your metabolism. So you're enhancing this mitochondrial production. You're saving money and you're saving time. I mean, I can't say enough about intermittent fasting. So you have two different fitness options to look at. If you're older and you don't want to put yourself at risk, or you don't think you're healthy enough to do anything at a higher level intensity, then stick in the fat burning zone. This is what you would do in cardiac rehab. It's safe. The higher intensity anaerobic zone may need medical clearance. The fat burning zone is easy. You should be able to talk while you're exercising in this zone. In this anaerobic zone, it's very intense. You are not going to have enough oxygen to be able to carry on a conversation. Almost anybody can do the fat burning zone. Almost anybody can walk from one room to the next, and all you do is sustain it on a treadmill or some other form of exercise. This high intensity anaerobic capacity takes time to develop. It's an efficient way to burn fat in the fat burning zone. But if you really want to ramp up your fat burning capacity, you would exercise in this anaerobic zone. So these are professional athletes that can eat 5,000 to 10,000 calories a day and just burn that right through them without gaining weight, because they have all this mitochondria and all this increased metabolism to burn the fat. In the fat burning zone, it's more about the duration of time and less about the intensity. And in the anaerobic zone, it's more about short durations at very high intensity. So on page 137, I ask you to reflect. Hopefully you've calculated this. You know what your heart rate goal should be. You know where your maximum heart rate is. You know where your anaerobic zone range is, your aerobic zone, and your fat burning zone. And so you should be able to be on a treadmill or walk in your neighborhood, check your heart rate, and immediately know which of those zones that you're exercising in. We talk about the type of exercise. Again, there's all types of ways to get your heart rate up. I mentioned this, I think Sunday, I was at church last week playing with a bunch of teenage boys. We were playing a modified version of dodgeball. And it was in a very tightly enclosed area with a couple of rules. But within 10 minutes, I was having a great time and I was sweating and my heart rate was up. I checked my watch and I was in the aerobic zone. And it was a fun activity. I didn't feel like I was exercising. I was just having fun. And that's the key. Whatever you do, you have to have fun with it. You absolutely have to find fun things to do. And in this case, you see the grandmother playing soccer with the grandchildren. It can be that simple. It could be working in your garden. It could be cleaning your house with a timer set that you've got to get things done in 20 minutes because someone's coming over and you got to get the house clean. That may be all that we're talking about. So I ask you, what's your favorite cardiovascular exercises? I want you to think about activities that you do often or that you enjoy doing where you get your heart rate up, where it feels like a brisk walk. Make a list of these activities and start thinking about which one of those that you will do 3 days a week. And maybe you change it up. We should warm up before we do this. It allows the muscles to get warm with blood, to stretch, be more flexible, less likely to get injured. It enhances blood flow to the muscles. It dilates the arteries, so we make more nitric oxide and we deliver more oxygen to our muscles. And then we should always, if we can possibly do this, have a 5-minute cool down period where we're really slowing down and we're allowing the blood flow to wash the lactic acid out of our muscles so we're not so sore the next day. And then how do you maintain this fitness? Once you've developed fitness, the best way to do it is to continue doing it. But a lot of people think, well, if I go on vacation and I don't exercise for 2 weeks, I'm going to lose all that benefit I've gained over the last 6 months of starting out with a 5-minute walk 3 days a week. Now I'm up to 25 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And now I've been on vacation for 2 weeks and I haven't exercised. I'm going to lose it all. Absolutely not true. Your fitness level declines after 2 weeks of doing absolutely nothing. And every now and then, it's probably a good idea to take a week off of exercise. I tell patients and athletes all the time, even the high-end athletes will take a time off where their bodies can rest and recover and rebuild. 50% of all those benefits we talked about for your cholesterol, your blood pressure, your heart, your weight, your mindset, your mental cognitive function, 50% of those benefits are lost a month after you stop exercising. So even if it's a month that you haven't done anything because maybe you got COVID or there was some other reason you couldn't exercise, you haven't lost all those benefits yet. You've had a decline, but you can get back to doing those things without feeling like it's too hard to get back into shape. So it's the intensity that seems more important in preserving your fitness level than how often or how frequent or how long you do it. Okay, the best time to exercise is when you can most easily commit to a routine. If you've got a friend or a partner and you decide this is our time to exercise, that's probably the best advice I have for you. But if you're on your own, most people are most successful at maintaining their exercise programs long term if they do it first thing in the morning, before any distractions, before any other urgent matters come up, before plans change in the evening when you come home from work because there's something else going on. I wanted to show you just a couple of examples from my Fitbit, which I have this Fitbit watch, the same watch that I use to keep track of my heart rate. I wear it like a watch, but it really is a Fitbit. And so this is showing you my week summary of February 21st through 27th. And it tells you here I exercised a total of 3 hours and 50 minutes on 3 different days. So on a Monday, I exercised 55 minutes. On Friday, it was just over an hour. And then on Saturday, it was just over an hour and a half. And the Fitbit calculates my heart rate as I go through the exercises. And it tells you that I was in the aerobic zone here 72% of the time. And my average heart rate was 134. My heart rate max at 60 is 160. So I was getting close to that anaerobic capacity. And then there was a short period of time, maybe 10 minutes, that I was really breathless and in the anaerobic zone. This was my Monday morning basketball session. This was my next Monday morning basketball league that I play in. Average heart rate of 131 beats per minute for that hour, with 750 calories burned. Then on the following Saturday, I played an hour and a half of basketball. And there was some time where I was not playing, so the heart rate came down, but I still burned almost 1,000 calories during that hour and a half. This is just one example of an exercise session on the treadmill. So this was, tells you 30, oops, let me go back to this, 35 minutes essentially on the treadmill. And I was trying to see how fast I could run a 5K. And so I warmed up a little bit for 5 minutes, and then I turned the treadmill on and restarted it, and I counted. I started recording what I did. And so this is showing you what I did. So my average heart rate was 153. Now my maximum is 162. And when I first started running, I got there because I had actually been jogging before I started calculating this. But what you see with my heart rate is that's very stable. I pretty much have the same speed on the treadmill this entire 35 minutes. You can see there's a little bit of variability in my heart rate. Probably the most important thing is when I stopped and got off the treadmill, when I turned it from the running rate to a walking rate, my heart rate pretty quickly dropped back down to normal. This is believed to be a sign of a relatively healthy heart with good flow, because the recovery time allowed my heart rate to slow down. So again, this is just a review. So my average heartbeat was 153 beats a minute. That's 95% of my maximum heart rate. I was in the anaerobic zone almost this whole time, and I was out of breath. I was not necessarily enjoying it. I was trying to distract myself with a movie I was watching on Netflix. And every now and then I'd look at the time and realize, well, that minute went fast, or that minute went slow. But I was sort of in the groove here. And once I got here and I got to about 10 minutes to go, I knew I was going to be okay. So I'm in the anaerobic zone. So what does that have to do with my mitochondria? What was I telling my body during this 35 minutes? I was telling my body, because of this level of intensity, I better make more mitochondria, because this guy, the body is thinking, I'm going to keep doing this. And in order to do this successfully over and over again, I need more mitochondria. So he's actually making more mitochondria. What does that mean about my metabolism? It means my resting metabolism was being increased. So when I'm sitting, I will burn more fat than if I had not exercised this way. This is a different example of a different exercise session. This was basketball, where for 1 hour and 1 minute, I was playing basketball. And you can see there are times when the heart rate, drops down. This is when somebody says, let's take a water break. And we take a minute or two and get some water, and the heart rate comes down. Then we go back up. And in basketball, as you know, sometimes you're running, sometimes you're not running as much. So there's more variability there. My average heart rate here was 131. So this, when I did the calculations, was a little bit different. I was in the aerobic zone most of the time during this hour. My average heart rate was 82. 85 or 86% puts me in the anaerobic zone. So I was close, but I wasn't quite there. But I was still getting the benefits, and I was enjoying the hour because I enjoy basketball. Okay, so that's more like interval training. There's exercise cautions. If you have heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, breathing problems, or any concerns about your heart, you should see someone who can clear you with confidence that you're not going to cause any more injury or put yourself at any risk. If there's any question at all, get medical clearance before you advance into something that's more than just brisk walking. Those who start jogging and haven't done this in a while are more likely to have problems with their feet, their legs, their knees, their hips, their back. And your body's saying, hey, you're telling me to do something I haven't done in a long time here. I can handle this for 5 minutes, 3 days a week, but you're pushing me doing this much longer than I'm ready, than I'm trained to. So you start having inflammation and pain. The message here is you have to back off. You have to back off on the volume, the number of days a week, or the duration of time until your body can adapt to it. Women especially are susceptible to some of these injuries, primarily just because of their anatomy. Their hips tend to be a little bit wider, puts a little bit more strain on their knees and their ankles. Whatever you do, if you have these kind of problems, make sure you see somebody that's trained in biomechanics, a chiropractor, a physical therapist, a sports medicine expert, somebody that can help you identify why that right ankle hurts and not the left, why the right side of your buttocks hurts with your right knee, because there's usually a really good explanation. If we address the root cause, then we can rehab that and we can get you back to the point where you can continue running or walking and progressing where you want to be. Otherwise, you're just going to hurt and you're not going to know why, and you're going to quit doing the activity. There are times when your heart rate is going to be slower because there are medications that slow the heart rate. You need to know what some of these medications are. There are other medications that will make the heart rate go faster. So the application here is if you're on something that lowers your heart rate, then your heart rate, your exercising zones are always going to be on the lower end of the target because it's already lowered it. If you're like me in August when the ragweed is really bad and I have to take an Allegra D and my resting heart rate goes from say 56 up to 70, well, that's a 14-point increase. So that means when I'm exercising, I'm going to be a little bit higher on that heart rate zone because the medication already increased it by 14 points. So here's the summary. Brisk walking is the fat burning zone. It's easy, a way to burn fat. It's safe and it's not strenuous. That's the good news. If you exercise at a higher intensity and have been cleared medically, you will likely be out of breath at times. So you need to really enjoy the activity, the exercise. But this is how you will increase your metabolism. But please do not do this unless you know that you've been cleared by a medical professional. So for those of you who have been runners or who think you might want to start jogging, I just wanted to give you a few pointers because I ran in high school. I ran cross country in high school, not because I liked it, but because I was hoping it would put me in better shape for basketball. And I did it for 3 years. It was miserable. but I was committed to being better at basketball, and I thought this would help. So here is the perfect running form where the foot hits right below the hip, where the heel comes up pretty high, almost hits the buttocks. You have to understand the mechanics of this. If this heel comes up and is closer to the buttocks because the gluteal muscles and the hamstring muscles are strong enough to pull it close, and then it has to swing forward as it takes another stride. Let me take that back. The lever arm on this is very short, and the energy that you need at your hip flexor to swing this leg forward is very minimal. If the muscles here are weak and the foot is dragging back here, there's a lot more energy involved in swinging that foot forward. And so you're using extra energy just in the mechanics of the run. So this is an efficient run. So a good running form requires tight, strong gluteal muscles and good hamstrings. And then the foot strike should be right under the hip. When you're running, you should never have your hands cross the midline. If your hand swings over this way and your other hand swings over this way, you're basically turning yourself from side to side as you're trying to run forward. It's a lot of wasted energy. So you try to swing your arms almost as if you're trying to touch your pockets as your arms go by. Your elbows should go straight back and then come straight forward. And you want to keep yourself in a good forward line. They also recommend a slight forward lean, as opposed to straight up and down. The reason for this is if your foot strikes right below your hip, you're going to hit the ground with the force of the weight of your body, with say 160 pounds. But the ground is going to hit you with that same force, 160 pounds, and it's going to push you right up. So it's almost like the ground is pushing you up. And if you're leaning forward as it pushes you up, the motion is going to be a bounding motion forward. If you do, I'll show you another slide that shows you the wrong form and why it's the wrong form. So here's some pointers for those of you who are interested. The cadence for the ideal run is 180 steps per minute. That really requires not long strides, but short strides. And we know that that's the ideal number of steps per minute because it forces you to keep these shorter steps that cause you to bound up, keeping your foot right below your hip. You can buy apps that have songs with beats that beat at 180 steps per minute or 180 beats per minute. So you can actually run to the sound of the beat of the song. Here's a couple other things about posture, this midfoot strike, and a couple other things about cadence. So this is mostly a review. This is what you don't want to do. This is what I did and didn't know I was making a mistake. When I run with my heel first and then my toe down, what's happening is I'm putting pressure on the ground in this direction, but the ground is pushing me back this way. So with every 2 or 3 feet I go forward, the ground is going to meet me with an equal force and push me backwards. And it's a very inefficient way to run. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to run on your toes either. So this is called good form running. And if you have difficulty breaking this habit, because this is how you've always run, you should check out anything you can find on the web called barefoot running, because barefoot running will teach you to put your foot strike right down like this. So if you run barefoot on your sidewalk like this, it's going to jolt and it's going to hurt. If you run barefoot on a sidewalk with your toe down first, it's going to be very uncomfortable. But this is the best way to absorb the shock of the foot striking the ground if you're barefoot. And this will teach you the proper foot strike if you go barefoot. Now, you don't want to do that very long because that's a recipe for terrible Achilles tendonitis and plantar fasciitis. But the point is it helps you run correctly. Again, here's just showing you the couple different foot strikes that you want to avoid, the heel first and the toe first. This is really how the foot should strike the ground. Primarily, it's the mid part of the foot that strikes it, and then just after this part of the foot strikes, the heel strikes. It almost looks like a flat foot strike. I want to show you a really neat video that illustrates good form running and the mechanics of some athletes that are able to do this very effectively. And I think it will really illustrate what I'm talking about here. If I can find where this was, I'll show you.
All right, so this is the 1,500-meter semifinal from Athens. All these guys are just trying to get through to make the final, have a shot to run for the gold medal. So we're going to be able to see some good examples of good form running, and we're going to be able to see some world-class runners who could possibly improve on their form a little bit. One of the things I'll point out first is right as they come off the first turn, they're running about 3:52 mile pace. You can see how relaxed the Kenyans are, especially. No wasted movements. From the front, you can see how their arms stay on their own side of their bodies. They're not robotic, but they're really relaxed and they stay on their own sides. You can also see how level their heads are. Not a whole lot up and down motion, whereas in the back you can see I'm moving my head around. Some of the other guys are bouncing up and down. From the side, we can see the lean. Pretty much the whole pack illustrates it very well. You can see especially how the Kenyans are able to keep their weight forward in perfect sync with their stride. Very relaxed. As we slow it down a little bit, we can see a couple things. We can see how both Kenyans are landing right underneath themselves, right on their midfoot. Not reaching out, striking heel first. They pull that foot through. You can also, we're going to take a look at the guy in the orange, who is obviously working a little bit harder. His arms are going every which way. And yet he's one of the best runners in the world in spite of his inefficiencies. So even the best runners have room to improve. And we can see that again as they come off the last turn. The British guy in the white and blue, you can see his head start to bob a little bit. The Dutch guy in the orange again starts to work hard. And then just watch both Lagat and Kaouch from Morocco, how well they're able to maintain their form and they're able to move right through and finish strong.
You'll just have to look at this foot strike. He's almost hitting his buttocks. The other thing you'll notice is their hip flexors are very flexible, so they're able to reach back really far with their lag leg, and that's also a very efficient way to run.
And in the final, in the race for the gold medal, we have Lagat again, and then a different Moroccan, El Garouj, the world record holder. And they are illustrating pretty much perfect form here down the final stretch. Very little.
Also, notice that they have kind of this bounding motion where they sort of look like a deer bounding because of the way their foot's hitting.
Up and down motion, very level heads. Their weight is forward. Their foot strike is right underneath their hip lines. Garouj is perfectly on his midfoot, and Lagat at this point is a little bit more up on his forefoot. But their very long strides are not coming from the front. That long stride is coming out behind them, and they're able to not overstride and get that foot right underneath their hips. They're two of the best milers ever, and for good reason.
Okay, so hopefully that helps you. I realize that most of you are not interested in being Olympic mile runners, but for those of you who are thinking about doing any jogging, this is really, I think, an excellent reminder of the mechanics and what you want to strive for. Now, this is something that I started doing about 10 years ago. I started pole vaulting when my son was taking it up in high school. I hadn't done this in, almost 32 years, and I wasn't sure I'd be able to. But once I started, it sort of came back to me, muscle memory. One thing I want to show you is the running technique that I developed once I learned how to run correctly. And there's a little bit of a criticism here that I have for myself, but I'm clearly running better. That foot strike is right under where I'm lacking. My problem right here is my hip flexor is not near flexible enough. I'm not reaching back like those other runners. So you can see. Let me try it one more time. See if I can show you. So there's the foot strike. The hip flexion is not near what it should be. Okay, there's about as much hip flexion as I have. And there's the hip flexion again. But if I want to improve my speed, I need to improve that, and I need to improve the strength in my gluteal muscles and my hamstrings. Now, you might say, why are you even doing that? You're 60 years old. Well, I want to get better. I don't expect to be like an Olympic athlete, but I want to improve it. So how do I do that? I have to develop strength in my gluteal muscles, flexibility in my hamstrings, and keep my joints moving to run the best that I can at the age of 60. And the faster I run, the higher I can hold up on the pole and the higher I can jump when I'm pole vaulting. And that's something I enjoy doing. And so that's motivation for me to exercise and get in better running. Okay, so your assignments this week, I want you to reduce your intake of caffeine and plan your meals in advance. I did this week with my vegetables. So my wife got a bag of broccoli and cauliflower and some baby carrots, and Sunday afternoon I put them in different baggies, about a cup in each baggie, and I just grabbed it today, and I had part of my lunch ready to go. It makes it so much easier. Cutting back on caffeine is important because caffeine is an artificial stimulant. And usually if you're using a lot of caffeine to stay awake and to find energy, it's because you're not listening what your body's telling you about getting enough good quality sleep and getting the right type of nutrition and the right kind of exercise. So your goal from an exercise standpoint is to find where your ideal heart rate zone is and decide where you want to be. Do you want to be in the fat burning zone? If you do, you need to know what your heart rate should be and the upper and lower limit of that zone. And then find a way to calculate that, determine that when you're out walking or on a treadmill. Know where you are, know what that feels like. If you're advancing to a higher level of fitness, know when you're getting to the aerobic zone or the anaerobic zone. Get a feel for what that feels like. It'll help you so much. And for those of you who are beginning, you're going to find that I'm not asking you to do anything difficult. Walking in your heart rate, your fat burning zone is going to be very doable. Okay, so next week we're going to talk about strength, fitness, the benefits of strength fitness, and then Dr. Jakubowski is going to present a lot of really useful information on preserving your back health or rehabilitating back problems. This is going to help empower you to live with back pain or to prevent it. I think you'll really enjoy his presentation. So let me get out of this part of the presentation, and I'm going to open this up for discussions if I can get us there. Let's see. Got to remember how to do this, folks. Okay. We should be able to, oh, there we go. Does the high intensity training work the same if it's at 40 minutes and 20 or a 20-20 ratio? Has this type of training? Let's see. So I guess I don't quite understand what the ratio is, the 40-20. Is it that the high intensity is 40 minutes and the lower intensity is 20 minutes? I'm not sure what that means. So Sarah, you might want to just post that in the Facebook as a question with a little bit more explanation as to what you're talking about there so I can answer it.
40 seconds on.
Oh, 40 seconds on and 20 seconds off. Okay. Yeah. So that 40 seconds is probably pretty high intensity. And then you got 20 seconds where you're relative resting. Yes. In fact, that's one of the exercises that I enjoy doing in the summer when I'm trying to get in shape for pole vaulting and working on my speed. Is I'll go down to the track and I'll maybe jog a lap, and then I'll start doing sprints. But I'll do a 20-yard sprint the first couple of times, just going real slow and gradually building my speed. And it takes me 3 or 4 of those to feel like I'm going about 90% of my maximum speed. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that I'm running anything earth-shattering, but for me, it's about 90% of the speed that I can go, and I'm slowly, gradually increasing that speed. So when I do, then I extend it to 30 yards or 40 yards. So I'll walk back. I'll do the sprint, and then I'll walk back. In a way, kind of similar to what you're talking about. So when I'm sprinting, I get my heart rate way up. By the time I'm doing a 50 or 60-yard sprint, my heart rate I'm out of breath. I can't talk. But then I walk back, and my heart rate comes back down probably to the fat burning zone. Then I turn around and I do it again. And then I might run 100 yards, a quarter of the way around the track with increasing my heart rate, and then walk or jog 100 yards. So there's a lot of ways to do this. I personally like to do that because it's different. I'm going at a high intensity, and then I have some time to cool down. So I think that's a great way to do that. If you enjoy it, I say that's probably perfect. But get a feel for what your heart rate is doing in that zone when you first come out of that 40 seconds. See where that is. See where it is at the end of the 20 seconds when you're resting. What was the next question? Will you burn fat if you walk 3 10-minute sessions instead of a 30-minute walk? Yes, you can do that. That's a really important point that I should have emphasized. There was a study that actually pointed that out, that you can break those sessions up into 10-minute sessions if you want. You can do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at your lunch break at work, 10 minutes before dinner in the evening in the fat burning zone. So it doesn't have to be continuous. So it's a great question. Yes, another really good question. If you lift weights for half an hour and you don't rest between machines, will it count as cardiovascular fitness? Yeah, your heart rate will probably be in the high fat burning zone or in a low aerobic zone. If you check your heart rate while you're doing that, you ought to know. And that's actually how I like to lift weights, maybe a 30 or a 60-minute rest between sets. So that's the idea of curves, which was the women's kind of a program for women where they would go to a gym and they would exercise for 30 seconds, and then someone would say, okay, now rotate, and you go to the next machine. And the goal was to keep the heart rate in the fat burning zone while you're doing strength training exercises. So that's a really good form of exercise. So yes, and if you have those foot problems besides swimming, that's a very good way to deal with it. And hopefully that's something that you enjoy if you're asking the question. So excellent question and a good solution. How beneficial is to do interval training from an intensity of 3 to 6, like walking normal and then walk very fast? So yeah, the answer to that is, what's your heart rate doing when you're at that level 6 intensity? What zone are you in? Are you in the anaerobic zone or the aerobic zone? Because the more you can get in the higher intensity zones where you're a little bit more winded, the more mitochondria you're going to make, and the faster your metabolism will be through the day, the more calories you'll burn. But again, if you're not sure if your heart is ready for that or healthy for that, I wouldn't do it. I would make sure that you get cleared to do that first. But the answer is always going to be, when you do this, know where your heart rate is and what that means for you and your age. Hopefully that helps you. If you're doing interval training on a treadmill, is it okay to hang on to the treadmill, or is it better to lower the grade so you don't hang on? I'm not sure. I guess the only reason I think you would hang on to the treadmill is if you're using the pulse monitor on the handles to check your heart rate. Otherwise, I don't hang on to the treadmill. I try to use my arms to swing. I feel like I can run better when my arms are swinging. So I don't know that I would recommend hanging on the treadmill unless you feel like you're stumbling and you need support. Any other questions? Is that it?
There's a comment I want to share. I've noticed music helps to increase intensity of cardio very naturally. Different songs cause me to move through different levels of intensity, like the interval training.
Yeah. That's a really good point. That's how I am. If I'm exercising and I'm not trying to watch something on Netflix, I need music to keep me motivated. So I think that a lot of that has to do if you like the music and if the beat sort of gets the adrenaline flowing and helps you with that level of intensity. So I'm not sure, Paul, if this is something that you've got an app or a song list where you've got a faster beat and then a slower beat where you maybe go at a higher intensity and the next song is a little bit lower intensity. But if it motivates you to run at the intensity you're trying to get to, I think it's a great idea. I hope that helps. Hope that answers your question. Okay, so those are all great questions. Hopefully, all of you feel a little bit more empowered to start doing something to challenge yourself a little bit to get your heart rate up, and you got to make it fun. It might just be pulling the curtains and dancing in your living room to a song you like, but make it fun and make it at least 3 days a week. Start gradual and build from there, and keep track of it. Keep track of your heart rate. I think the Fitbits are a good investment, or anything that if you're good enough, you can check your pulse by the carotid artery on your neck. It's the groove right between your neck muscle and your throat, right up close to under the angle of your jaw. You can find that pulse there, or you can find the pulse on your wrist, on the thumb side of your wrist, right by all the tendons. It's right through here. A couple fingers right there. You ought to be able to pick that up as another way to check your heart rate. But hopefully you're enjoying that. And with the nice weather coming, you find that there's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of places to hike. Hiking can be fun, and you don't feel like you're exercising. It's more of an exploration. So I just encourage you all to find some activities you enjoy. When I cut the grass in the summer, I keep my heart rate monitor on, and I count that as cardiovascular fitness. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week, and please share your comments, your questions on Facebook. We'll try to stay connected and make sure we answer any questions, and we will look forward to seeing you next time.